Captain Jake Miller sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift by on the main screen. The Starbound had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks now, mapping new systems and looking for signs of life. So far, they had found nothing but empty planets and cold rocks floating in space. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and tired eyes. He had been captain of the Starbound for 5 years, and this was his longest mission yet. The ship was not very big, but it was fast and well-equipped for exploration. His crew of 45 people had become like family to him during their long journey through the darkness. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station at the communications desk, "I'm picking up something strange." Jake turned to look at her. Amy was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair tied back in a neat ponytail. She was one of the best communications officers in the fleet, and if she said something was strange, it usually was. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, standing up from his chair. Amy frowned at her screen, pressing buttons and adjusting controls. "It's a signal, sir, but it's not like anything I've ever seen before. The pattern is very complex, like mathematics, but there's something else mixed in with it." Commander Lisa Parker walked over from her station near the weapons console. Lisa was Jake's second in command, a smart woman with short black hair and a serious face. She had been in space longer than anyone else on the ship. "Could it be from another ship?" Lisa asked, looking at Amy's screen. "I don't think so," Amy said, shaking her head. "The signal is too strong and it's coming from a system we haven't mapped yet. About 2 light years from here, near the Vega system." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all their years of exploration, humans had never found another intelligent species. There were theories and hopes, but no proof. Could this be it? "Dr. Jones," Jake called across the bridge, "can you come take a look at this?" Dr. Carl Jones was the ship's expert on languages and communication. He was an older man with gray hair and thick glasses who spent most of his time reading and studying. If anyone could figure out what this signal meant, it would be him. Carl walked over slowly, adjusting his glasses as he looked at Amy's screen. "Fascinating," he said quietly. "The mathematical parts are clear enough, but there's something else here. Something that feels like someone asking for help." "Help?" Jake asked. "Are you sure?" Carl nodded slowly. "The pattern repeats every few minutes, but each time it gets a little weaker, like someone is running out of power or time." Jake felt a chill run down his back. "Amy, can you boost the signal? Make it clearer?" "I can try, sir." Amy worked at her controls, and slowly the strange signal became stronger on their speakers. It was unlike anything they had ever heard, part music, part mathematics, and part something that sounded almost like crying. "My God," Lisa whispered. "That sounds like a distress call." Jake made a quick decision. "Set course for the source of that signal, maximum speed." "Sir," Lisa said, "we don't know what we're flying into. This could be dangerous." Jake looked at her. "Lisa, if that's really a distress call, then someone out there needs help. We can't just ignore it." The Starbound changed course, its engines humming louder as they pushed toward maximum speed. For the next 18 hours, the crew worked to decode the strange signal. Dr. Jones spent the entire time at Amy's station, writing notes and running the signal through every computer program they had. Finally, as Jake was drinking his morning coffee on the bridge, Carl looked up with excitement in his eyes. "Captain," he said, "I think I've got something." Everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing and looked at Carl. "The signal is definitely a distress call," Carl continued. "But it's not from humans, it's from something else, something that calls itself Zenthari." Jake felt his hands shake slightly. "Aliens?" "Yes, sir. And from what I can understand, they're in serious trouble. Their entire fleet is trapped somehow, and they're running out of time." Amy looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm getting more signals now. Lots of them. All saying the same thing, help us." Jake walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien beings were trapped and dying, and they were asking for help. No human had ever met an alien before. No one knew what they looked like or how they thought, but they were asking for help, and that was something Jake understood. "How many ships?" he asked. Carl looked at his notes. "From what I can tell, sir, it's their entire battle fleet. Maybe 300 ships." Lisa walked up beside Jake. "Captain, we're just one ship. What can we do against whatever trapped 300 alien vessels?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his crew, about their families back on Earth, about the risk they would be taking. But he also thought about the desperate voices in that signal, asking for help from anyone who might hear them. "We're going to help them," he said finally. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them what we've found and what we're doing, but we're not going to wait for orders." "Sir," Lisa said, "this could change everything. First contact with aliens should be handled by diplomats, not explorers." Jake turned to look at her. "Lisa, by the time diplomats get here, those aliens might be dead. We're the only ones who can help them right now." Dr. Jones looked up from his work. "Captain, I've managed to send a simple message back to them. Just basic mathematics to show we understand." They responded immediately. "What did they say?" "They're grateful, sir. They've been trapped for over 2 years. They thought no one would ever hear them." Jake felt a weight settle on his shoulders. 300 alien ships trapped for 2 years, slowly dying while waiting for help that might never come. And now, somehow, it was up to him and his small crew to save them. "How long until we reach their position?" he asked. 6 hours at current speed," replied the navigation officer. Jake nodded. "All right, people. We have 6 hours to figure out how to save an alien fleet. Let's get to work." As the Starbound raced through space toward the unknown, Jake stood at the front of the bridge watching the stars. Behind him, his crew worked frantically to understand more about the aliens and their situation. In a few hours, they would make history as the first humans to meet another intelligent species. But first, they had to make sure those aliens survived long enough for the meeting to happen. The signal from the Zenthari continued to play softly on the bridge speakers, a haunting reminder that somewhere in the darkness ahead, 300 ships full of alien beings were waiting for salvation that might never come. The Starbound dropped out of faster-than-light speed with a gentle shudder that Jake felt through the deck plates. He gripped his command chair as the main screen flickered and then showed them what lay ahead. Every person on the bridge fell, silent. Floating in space before them was something that should not exist. A massive wall of shimmering energy stretched across thousands of miles, glowing with colors that hurt to look at directly. Inside this barrier, Jake could see the dark shapes of hundreds of ships, frozen like insects, trapped in amber. "My God," whispered Dr. Helen White, the ship's physicist. She was a small woman with red hair who usually stayed quiet during bridge operations, but now she stared at the screen with wide eyes. "That's impossible. The energy readings are off the charts." Chief Engineer Ben Davis looked up from his console. Ben was a big man with strong hands and a beard that was always slightly messy. He had worked on ships for 20 years, but Jake could see he had never seen anything like this. "Captain," Ben said, his voice shaking slightly, "whatever that thing is, it's using more power than our entire ship produces in a year. Every second." Jake walked closer to the main screen. The trapped ships inside the energy barrier looked sleek and beautiful. Nothing like the bulky human vessels he was used to. They seemed to be made of some kind of smooth metal that reflected the strange light of their prison. "Amy," Jake called to his communications officer. "Can you reach the aliens?" Amy Brooks worked at her station, pressing buttons and adjusting controls. After a few minutes, she nodded. "I've got them, Captain. The signal is much clearer now." A new voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English through their translation computers. The voice was deep and musical, unlike any human voice Jake had ever heard. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Keth Tralian of the Zenthari Third Fleet. We are grateful beyond words that you have come." Jake cleared his throat. This was it. The first real conversation between humans and aliens. "Admiral Tralian, this is Captain Jake Miller of the human ship Starbound. We received your distress signal. What happened to you?" There was a pause, and then the alien voice continued. We were patrolling this sector when we encountered enemies we call the Devourers. They are an ancient race that feeds on the life energy of other species. They trapped us in this quantum prison 2 of your years ago. Dr. White stepped forward. Captain, may I speak to them? I need to understand how this prison works. Jake nodded. Admiral, our physicist would like to ask some questions. Of course, any help you can provide would be welcome. Helen moved to Amy's station. Admiral, I'm Dr. Helen White. Can you tell me about the energy barrier holding you? Dr. White, the prison is a quantum field that locks our ships in a time-dilated space bubble. We experience time normally, but we cannot move or escape. The Devourers harvest energy from us slowly, keeping us alive but weak. Helen frowned at her readings. The energy patterns are incredible. How long can you survive in there? Our life support systems are failing. We estimate perhaps 10 more of your days before the first ships begin to lose air. Jake felt his stomach drop. 10 days was not much time to figure out how to break a prison that had held 300 advanced alien ships for 2 years. Lieutenant Ryan Bell looked up from the tactical station. Ryan was young and eager, with brown hair and quick eyes that missed nothing. Captain, I'm detecting movement on the edge of the system. Multiple ships approaching fast. The Devourers, Admiral Tralian said, his voice heavy with worry. They return periodically to feed. If they find you here, they will try to trap your ship as well. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was scared, he could see it in their faces. They were one small human ship against alien technology that had already defeated a fleet of 300 advanced vessels. How many ships are coming? Jake asked Ryan. Long-range sensors show at least 50, sir. They'll be here in less than 6 hours. Dr. White was studying her readings intensely. Captain, I'm seeing something strange about this quantum field. The Zenthari technology is very advanced, much more than ours. But the field itself has some kind of irregular pattern. What do you mean? Jake asked. Helen looked up from her screen. Their ships are incredibly sophisticated. Everything is precise, mathematical, perfect. But this prison they're trapped in, it's not perfectly stable. There are tiny fluctuations, random variations that don't make sense. Admiral Tralian's voice came through the speakers again. Dr. White is correct. We have studied our prison for 2 years. The quantum field oscillates in ways our computers cannot predict. It seems almost chaotic. Ben Davis scratched his beard thoughtfully. Chaotic? That doesn't sound very alien. Most of their stuff is probably way more organized than ours. Helen suddenly looked excited. Ben, that's it. Captain, what if the reason they can't escape isn't because the prison is too advanced, but because it's too random? Jake didn't understand. Explain. Look at our ship, Helen said, walking around the bridge. Nothing on the Starbound is perfect. Our engines are patched together, our computers crash sometimes, our magnetic fields fluctuate. We're used to dealing with chaos and random problems. Dr. Jones looked up from his translation work. She might be onto something, Captain. In my conversations with the Zenthari, they keep mentioning how precise and logical everything in their society is. They think in mathematical patterns. So? Jake asked. Helen's eyes were bright with excitement. So maybe that's why they can't escape. The prison is designed to trap logical, predictable civilizations. But humans, we're not very logical, are we? Commander Lisa Parker had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. You're saying our primitive technology might actually be an advantage? Not primitive, Helen said. Chaotic, unpredictable. The Devourers probably never encountered a species that builds things the way we do. Jake felt a spark of hope. Are you saying we might be able to break them out? I don't know, Helen admitted. But I think we should try. Our fusion reactors don't work the same way as their power systems. Our computers think differently. Maybe we can disrupt the prison in ways they never tried. Admiral Tralian's voice interrupted them. Humans, we appreciate your desire to help, but you must understand. We have the most advanced technology in our part of the galaxy. If we cannot escape, how can your single ship succeed? Jake looked around at his crew. Amy at her communications station, working with equipment that broke down twice a week. Ben with his engines that he kept running with spare parts and clever repairs. Ryan with his weapons that were powerful but simple compared to alien technology. Helen with her theories that seemed crazy but just might work. "Admiral," Jake said, "maybe that's exactly why we can help you. We're not advanced. We're just stubborn humans who don't know when to quit." The alien was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Captain Miller, in all our years of space travel, we have never encountered a species quite like yours. Perhaps there is something to be learned from your approach." Jake turned to his crew. "All right, people. We have 6 hours before the Devourers get here. Let's figure out how to break the most advanced prison in the galaxy using nothing but human stubbornness and equipment held together with luck." As his crew got to work, Jake stared at the shimmering barrier holding 300 alien ships. Somewhere in there, beings from another world were counting on a small human crew to save them. It seemed impossible, but Jake had learned never to underestimate what humans could do when they refused to give up. The first Devourer ships appeared on the edge of the system like dark shadows against the stars. Jake watched them on the main screen, counting at least 60 vessels that looked like nothing he had ever seen before. They were black and angular, covered in spikes and strange growths that seemed to move on their own. "They're not like any ship design I know," Ryan Bell said from his tactical station. "The hull shapes don't make sense. It's like they were grown instead of built." "Admiral," Trellion's voice came through the speakers tight with fear. "Captain Miller, you must leave now. The Devourers will trap your ship if you stay. We cannot bear the responsibility of your capture." Jake looked around his bridge. For the past 5 hours, his crew had been working on Dr. White's crazy plan to use their chaotic human technology to disrupt the quantum prison. Ben Davis had modified their fusion reactors to produce irregular power bursts. Amy Brooks had programmed their communications array to broadcast random electromagnetic noise. Helen White had calculated frequencies that made no mathematical sense, but might confuse the prison systems. "Admiral," Jake said, "we're not leaving, we have a plan." "Captain, with respect, we have tried everything for 2 years. What can you possibly do that we have not attempted?" Helen White stepped forward. "Admiral, have you ever tried to break your prison with completely random energy patterns?" There was a pause. "Random patterns would serve no purpose. Our computers have calculated every possible frequency combination." "That's exactly the problem," Helen said. "Your computers are too smart. They think logically. But this prison was built to trap logical minds." Jake could see the Devourer ships getting closer. "Ben, are the modifications ready?" Ben Davis wiped grease off his hands with a dirty cloth. "Ready as they'll ever be, Captain. I've never tried to make our reactors work this badly on purpose before." "Amy, what about the communications array?" Amy looked nervous but determined. "I've programmed it to broadcast every kind of signal interference I can think of. It's going to be complete chaos." The Devourer ships were now close enough that Jake could see details on their hulls. They pulsed with a sickly green light, and tentacle-like appendages waved from their sides as if they were alive. "They're scanning us," Ryan reported. "I think they're trying to figure out what we are." "Let them wonder," Jake said. "Helen, start the sequence." Helen's hands moved over her controls. "Beginning random frequency generation. Ben, give me those irregular power bursts." The Starbound began to shake as Ben forced their fusion reactors to work in ways they were never designed for. Instead of the smooth, steady power output the ship normally produced, the reactors now stuttered and surged, unpredictably. "Amy, start the interference patterns," Jake ordered. Amy activated her communications array, and suddenly space around the Starbound filled with random radio signals, electromagnetic noise, and chaotic energy bursts that followed no pattern at all. The effect on the quantum prison was immediate. The shimmering barrier began to flicker, its perfect surface rippling like water in a storm. "Incredible," Admiral Trellian said, his voice filled with amazement. "The prison walls are becoming unstable. How is this possible?" "Because we're not trying to be logical," Helen explained as she worked. "We're just throwing chaos at it and seeing what happens." The Devourer ship suddenly changed direction, moving faster toward the Starbound. Jake could see they were confused by the random energy patterns the human ship was producing. "They don't know what to make of us," Ryan said, watching his tactical display. "Their ships keep changing formation like they can't decide how to attack." Jake understood. The Devourers were used to fighting predictable enemies. They had probably never encountered a species that used chaos as a weapon. "Increase the randomness," Jake ordered. "Make it even more chaotic." Ben pushed their reactors harder and the ship shook more violently. Amy added new interference patterns that made no sense even to her. Helen adjusted her frequencies to be as random as possible. The quantum prison responded by flickering faster. Cracks began to appear in the energy barrier, spreading like lines in breaking glass. "It's working," Admiral Tralian said, his voice excited. "The prison is failing, but Captain, your ship is in danger. The Devourers are almost upon you." Jake looked at the approaching enemy ships. They were close enough now that he could see weapon ports opening on their hulls. But something was wrong with their approach. Instead of attacking in an organized formation, they seemed confused and hesitant. "They can't figure out our pattern," Lisa Parker said from her station. "We're not behaving like any enemy they know." "That's because we don't have a pattern," Jake said with a grin. "We're just making it up as we go along." The first Devourer ship fired a green energy beam at the Starbound. Ryan quickly moved their ship in a random direction, not following any evasive pattern that could be predicted. The beam missed. "Keep it chaotic," Jake ordered. "Don't let them figure out what we're doing." More Devourer ships opened fire, but their precise targeting systems couldn't lock onto a ship that moved without any logical plan. Jake ordered random course changes that made no tactical sense but kept them alive. Meanwhile, the quantum prison continued to break apart. Large sections of the energy barrier were now flickering in and out of existence. "Admiral?" Helen called. "Can your ships move yet?" "Some of us are beginning to regain limited mobility," Tralian replied. "The time dilation is breaking down in sections." "Good. When you can move, get ready to fight. We're going to need all the help we can get." The Devourers were getting frustrated. Jake could see more ships arriving, and they were beginning to surround the Starbound, but they still seemed unable to coordinate their attacks against the chaotically moving human vessel. "Ben," Jake called, "can you give me more power to the engines?" "I can try, but the reactors are already running way outside normal parameters. If I push them harder, we might lose containment." "Do it," Jake ordered. "We need to keep them confused." Ben pushed the fusion reactors even further beyond their design limits. The Starbound lurched forward with a burst of speed that sent everyone grabbing for support. At that moment, the quantum prison finally shattered completely. The energy barrier collapsed in a brilliant flash of light, and 300 Zenthari ships suddenly found themselves free after 2 years of captivity. The effect on the battle was immediate. The Zenthari vessels, sleek and deadly, opened fire on the Devourer ships with weapons that made the human ships' armaments look like toys. "Thank you, humans," Admiral Tralian said, his voice full of emotion. "You have given us back our freedom." But Jake could see that the fight was far from over. More Devourer ships were arriving, and even with the Zenthari fleet free, they were still outnumbered. "Admiral," Jake said, "we're not done yet. Those Devourers still want to destroy us all." "Then we fight together," Tralian replied. "Human and Zenthari, side by side." Jake smiled as he watched alien and human ships begin to work together against their common enemy. The battle for their lives was just beginning, but for the first time since arriving in the system, he felt like they might actually win. The space around the Starbound exploded into chaos as 300 Zenthari ships joined the battle against the Devourer fleet. Jake watched in amazement as sleek alien vessels moved with perfect coordination, their weapons firing beams of pure energy that cut through the darkness like swords of light. But the Devourers were not giving up easily. More of their black, twisted ships kept arriving from the edges of the system. Jake counted over 200 enemy vessels now, and they seemed to be learning how to fight the newly freed Zenthari fleet. "Captain," Ryan Bell called from his tactical station, "the Devourers are adapting their tactics. They're starting to coordinate better against the alien ships." Jake could see what Ryan meant. The Devourer vessels were beginning to work together, using their superior numbers to surround groups of Xanthari ships. Their sickly green weapons were finding their targets more often now. Admiral Tralian, Jake called over the communications. They're figuring out how your ships fight. Yes, Captain Miller, the alien admiral replied, his voice tight with concern. The Devourers learn quickly. They have defeated many civilizations by studying their battle patterns and adapting. Jake had an idea. What if we don't give them any patterns to study? I do not understand. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Amy was still broadcasting random interference signals. Ben was keeping their reactors running in chaotic bursts. Helen was monitoring the quantum effects of their crazy tactics. They were all doing things that made no logical sense, and it was working. Admiral, Jake said, your ships fight with perfect coordination and logical tactics. That's what the Devourers expect. But what if some of us fought completely randomly? There was a pause. Captain, random tactics would be inefficient and dangerous. Maybe, Jake said with a grin, but they'd also be unpredictable. Ryan, take us into the middle of that Devourer formation. Full speed, no evasive pattern. Sir? Ryan looked confused. That's suicide. Trust me, Jake said. Amy, keep broadcasting that. Interference. Ben, give me everything the reactors can handle, but keep it irregular. The Starbound shot forward into the heart of the enemy formation like a bullet. The Devourer ships tried to track the small human vessel, but their targeting systems couldn't predict where it would go next because Jake himself didn't know where they were going. Fire at will, Jake ordered Ryan. Pick targets at random. Don't try to be efficient. Ryan fired their weapons wildly, hitting Devourer ships without any tactical plan. The enemy vessels scattered in confusion, unable to predict where the next attack would come from. Incredible, Admiral Tralian said. The Devourers are retreating from your position. They cannot adapt to tactics that have no logic. Then let's give them more chaos, Jake said. Admiral, can some of your ships try fighting like us? No coordination, no patterns, just random attacks? It goes against everything we have learned about space combat, Tralian replied slowly. Sometimes the best way to win is to break all the rules, Jake said. After a moment, Tralian's voice came back, sounding almost amused. Very well, Captain. We will try your human approach. Jake watched as several Xanthari ships broke away from their perfect formations and began attacking the Devourers randomly. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The alien vessels, with their superior firepower, became incredibly effective when the enemy couldn't predict their movements. Dr. Helen, White looked up from her station with excitement. Captain, the random quantum interference we're generating is affecting the Devourer ships too. Their energy-based technology can't handle the chaos we're creating. What do you mean? Jake asked. They're used to fighting in organized environments, with predictable energy patterns, Helen explained. But our chaotic signals are disrupting their systems. Look at their formation. They're having trouble communicating with each other. Jake could see she was right. The Devourer ships were no longer moving in their previous coordinated patterns. Some were flying in circles, others were firing at empty space, and several had even started shooting at their own ships by mistake. Ben, Jake called to his engineer, can you make our interference even stronger? Ben wiped sweat from his forehead. I can try, Captain, but if I push the reactors any harder, we might blow up. Do it, Jake ordered. Maximum chaos. Ben pushed their systems to the absolute limit. The Starbound shook violently as their reactors produced power bursts that defied every safety protocol ever written. Amy boosted her interference signals until the space around them was filled with electromagnetic noise that made normal communication nearly impossible. The effect on the Devourer fleet was devastating. Their ships began spinning out of control as their navigation systems failed. Their weapons fired randomly as their targeting computers crashed. Several Devourer vessels actually collided with each other as their coordination broke down completely. It's working, Tralian said, his voice filled with wonder. The entire Devourer fleet is in chaos. They cannot function in this environment of random energy. Jake watched as more Xanthari ships adopted the human style of random attacks. The combination of superior alien weapons and unpredictable human tactics was proving unstoppable. The Devourers, who had successfully trapped and destroyed countless civilizations, were being defeated by an approach they had never encountered before. "Captain," Lisa Parker called from her station, "the remaining Devourer ships are retreating. They're leaving the system." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. Against all odds, one small human ship and 300 rescued, aliens had defeated a fleet that had ruled this part of space for centuries. "Admiral Tralian," Jake said, "are your people all right?" "Thanks to you and your crew, Captain Miller, we are more than all right. We are free." The alien's voice was warm with gratitude. "In all our years of civilization, we have never encountered beings like humans. You saved us not with superior technology, but with something we had forgotten, the power of unpredictability." Dr. Jones looked up from his translation work. "Captain, Admiral Tralian is requesting permission to come aboard. He wants to meet us in person." Jake straightened his uniform. "Tell him he's welcome. This is a day for making history." An hour later, Jake stood in the Starbound's small landing bay watching as a Zenthari shuttle docked with their ship. When the airlock opened, Admiral Tralian stepped through, the first alien to ever set foot on a human vessel. Tralian was tall and graceful, with silver skin and large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. He wore a simple uniform that looked elegant despite its plainness. "Captain Miller," Tralian said, his voice even more musical in person. "How can we ever repay you?" Jake extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Admiral, just knowing we helped is payment enough." Tralian studied Jake's outstretched hand for a moment, then reached out and grasped it firmly. "I think this is the beginning of a great friendship between our peoples. The Zenthari Council will want to meet with Earth's leaders immediately." "What about the Devourers?" Jake asked. "They will not return to this sector," Tralian said with certainty. "You have shown them something they cannot understand or defeat, the power of chaos guided by courage and compassion." Jake looked around, at his crew, who were all smiling despite their exhaustion. They had come out here to explore empty space and map distant stars. Instead, they had made first contact with an alien civilization and helped win a battle that would be remembered for generations, Admiral, Jake said. "I think you're right, this is just the beginning." As the two leaders talked, the Starbound and the Zenthari fleet began their journey back toward Earth, carrying news that would change the galaxy forever. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest or superior technology, but by being uniquely, chaotically human.